I don't think disco builds up your core strength. That body is for disco. That's what it's for. It's for dancing. It is not for murdering. It's not for swinging an axe around.
Welcome to the Final Girls podcast, where we cherish dance scenes in horror movies. I'm Anna Bogutska, co-founder of the Final Girls Collective and your podcast host. If you're new to the show, welcome. In real life, the Final Girls put on events and screenings that explore the intersections of horror film and feminism. We're doing our next event at London's Prince Charles Cinema on the 20th of October, where we will be screening a 35mm print of Scream and doing a live podcast recording afterwards. On the show, though, we take a horror trope, rip it apart, rummage around in its thematic entrails, and figure out what works, what doesn't hold up, and what it says about the wider horror culture. Which is a very pretentious way of saying that basically we talk about horror movies in depth. In this fourth series of the podcast, we are talking all about teen horror, how it's evolved, and why teenagers make for such compelling protagonists in horror movies. We've covered the OG slasher films in our first handful of episodes, and we're now going deep into the 80s. And we'll be looking at teen horror all throughout the ages until we get to the most recent ones next year. Quick reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Final Girls UK for updates, announcements, and a lot of horror memes. We also have a Patreon where you can support our work should you choose to and get occasional bonus episodes. And today, after 4 episodes looking at the granddaddies of horror's biggest slasher franchises, we're doing our first double bill in the series with Canadian disco slasher Prom Night, starring the one, the only Jamie Lee Curtis, paired with an early spoof film of the genre, Student Bodies. If you're new to the show and have never seen these films before, you might want to see Prom Night because we do spoil everything about the film from the very beginning. And if the term disco slasher doesn't entice you, all I can say is that it's got a full 3-minute disco dance sequence just before the killing really gets going. Joining me is the brilliant and hilarious actor and writer Izora Barbie Brown, whose monthly column for her website you should absolutely check out. It's called Bloody Perfect, and she looks at a perfect scene from horror movies. Her latest one is about Pan's Labyrinth, and you should check it out all on our website. And with all of that said, please enjoy our take on Prom Night and Student Bodies. I don't even know how to start this one. It's like, welcome to prom. Oh, how have you been? We are going from opening the season with you, Izora, to talking about 2 very strange, sort of minor prom night themed horror movies.
That is called range, Anna. That is
Indeed.
Just... If Final Girls are going to give you something, it's range. We're covering everything.
Truly, madam. So, I think we can't really beat around the bush with these 2 films.
No.
Let's go in chronological order. And let's begin with Prom Night from 1980. Had you seen this film before?
I weirdly have not. I don't know how I missed it. Like, I mean, it's just your classic slasher. Got Jamie Lee Curtis in there, but I just never seen it. Yeah, so I was really glad that I watched this because I was like, oh, this is like adding to my little list in my head of like good classic horror films.
So for anyone who's not seen or heard of Prom Night before, I might be listening to this. Hello. I appreciate your choices. How would you summarize this film?
So it's about these group of friends when they're it's one of those, like, it's a revenge tale. a group of friends when they're younger, like playing a game that's a terrifying game in an abandoned house where a girl ends up dying. And then when they're all a lot older, someone is picking them off one by one, all the friends that were there and didn't tell anyone what happened. So it's like a classic slasher, lots of like POV from the killer, lots of like slashing and stabbing, and it all happens, all the murders happen on prom night. I think most of them, if not all of them. And Jamie Lee Curtis is there with like very feathered hair. It's great. If you like disco, this is also a film for you. Huge amount of disco. There's like a literal dance bit in it.
Man,
like...
we will. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. We will discuss the disco scene.
Yeah. So there's some like great outfits. There's some there's, you know, all your classic stuff of like teens in high school who, you know, the boys just want to sleep with all the girls and the girls are just like, oh, no, but maybe. Like that's the whole vibe. And there's like one girl who's like, I'm a virgin. And like, it's just all those tropes all like hanging around out there. And all the teens look like they're about 40 because it's like the 80s, but I mean, it's earlier, it's like 1980s, so it's still really the 70s. So everyone looks like they're actually like your parent, because they all have like, they're all dressed like your mum and they all have like really big feathered hair. But it's really fun and really good. Lots of like running scenes, lots of chasing and hiding and all that stuff. And even there's boobs, of course, you know. Yeah, all the things you want from that kind of film.
So you hadn't seen this film before. I'm very curious.
No.
Did you like it?
I actually did. I was like, yeah, I really liked it. I was like, this is, even though I hadn't seen it before, it's one of those films that's like, well, I feel like I know I've seen it before.
Yeah.
I like vaguely know, you feel like you're in safe hands. You're like, I know where this is going to go. So yeah, it was, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed lots of things about it. There's just lots of weird moments. Like, I love that the killer's like really like narrow hipped in his little outfit. And I'm just like,
I love the fact that his balaclava has sort of glitter on it.
Yeah. And his shoes have little heels.
Yes.
And
it's a disco slasher. It's a fucking disco slasher from start to finish. I love this film. Absolutely love it. Every time I rewatch it, I'm like, what? This film is great. This film is so much better than the last time I saw it.
I know. I was like, you picked this outfit to murder the people, like your little heels on and your little glitter balaclava. It's like really fun. Like, yeah, I loved it. And just everything about it is just like, I don't know. I just like, I love the outfits. I love like little backstories of like the jealousy between the girls and all this stuff, and like them with their boyfriends, and yeah, just like. The whole thing.
Even though all the teenagers look about 40, like you said.
Yeah.
Except Jamie Lee, who is a goddess. And looks amazing with her feathered mullet in this.
Yeah.
I think she looks arguably the best she's ever looked in this film. And like, aside from that, they all really behave like teenagers. They're kind of all sort of vulnerable. They're catty. They're insecure. I get so... That part feels very, very natural to me. Like the way they talk amongst themselves and what worries them and all of that. That does feel extremely high school. Yeah,
the way, especially like the relationship between the girls who are friends, like I love their conversation. Anytime they were like hanging out together, it was really fun. It feels like, I don't know, like all the high school movies we know now, it's like, this is really like well done. Of like just watching girls hang out and actually how girl friendships work and like the kind of comments they make about other girls and stuff like that. And also what's in keeping with it is that a lot of the the jealousy or like infighting is like over incredibly average men. Like they're like, we're both incredibly hot women and there's this one guy who's very basic who we both very much fancy. It's like, oh, that regular guy over there who looks like every other guy, that guy. And they're like, they literally spend the whole movie like trying to be with him. And I'm like, over this one guy, okay. And then even the girl who ends up like going to prom with a guy who literally just drives his van up to her on the street and is like, hey, do you want to ride to school? And then she's like, going to prom with him, and then they're like together. And I was like, this guy, this like little guy in his van, his glasses, is like, yeah, just pulling all the women, got
Slick.
a van. Yeah, just very slick. But yeah,
No,
I just
his
love
actual
that-
nickname in the film is Slick.
Is he called Slick? Okay. I just love it.
There's this weird moment as well where he goes to shake hands with Nick, who is the guy that Jamie Lee Curtis is Jamie Lee's boyfriend in the film, and the guy who Wendy, the other girl, is like obsessed over getting back.
Yeah.
And they shake hands, and Nick just looks at his hand like, oh, it's kind of wet.
Oh,
and he's
Lord.
like, Slick.
Wow. Like, yeah, and you're just like, I was like, anyone, apparently, in this era, disco era, anyone could get it. Like, you could look any old how, and everyone was like, yeah, you're fine. You're like a hot guy. Like, the standards for like, what guys were like, I don't know, were hot was like, I don't know, different. And I was like, you know what an inclusive time for just your regular guy. How nice for them. But yeah, I just love also like the thing of, you know, when guys in like, or teenage guys, where there's a bit where Wendy like kisses Nick in front of Jamie Lee, and Nick's just a bit like, Jamie Lee happens to walk past as it happens, and Nick's like, oh, Kim, like, oh man. And I'm just like, why are you always in a position just to be like kind of harassed by this girl and never doing anything about it until like Kim walks past and you're like, oh no, I'm so sorry. I'm clearly not trying to get back with Wendy. It's just that she's like, just, I don't know, she's had her tongue in her mouth for like a hot minute. Like just doing the least to like separate himself from the other girl for his new girlfriend. Just very confusing. It reminds me of in Carrie when like he takes Carrie to prom and they like kiss. I'm like, was this just a thing where you're like, well, we're on a date, so we're gonna make out, and even though I have a girlfriend, we all know that's fine. I don't know what the rules were. I don't get it.
Listen, it's the 70s, as you said. Times were different.
Like, can you just like make out with people and it'd be fine?
But can we talk a little bit about Kim, who's Jamie Lee Curtis's character? Like she is the coolest in this film.
She's very cool.
I really like the fact that she's both the final girl and also the prom queen, and generally just like a good vibe.
Yeah.
She's kind of cool. She's unassuming. I love the description of her. Okay, so this is a Canadian film, right? We should mention it's a Canadian slasher. So it's kind of in that weird space where some of the traditions and the things are different because it's obviously set in Canada.
Right.
All of the cast except Jamie Lee are Canadian, but it's kind of doing that thing where things are very similar to the American way as well. So it kind of lives in that kind of weird global in between, which we're now very used to, but it still does that thing. So if some things seem off, it's because it's Canadian.
That's what it is. Oh, Canada. That's why, like, she's prom queen, and I was like, why are they having like a rehearsal for prom queen? How do they know already? And that's why Canadians.
And also the very dramatic crowns as well, which are very different from the American prom queen and king crowns. I absolutely love them. They're so over the top. They're like royal, like the royal jewel crowns.
And they got like she got like a bouquet of flowers. Like, I was like, what is this? It's like a very big deal, apparently.
But at that moment, they like rehearse and they say what Nick and Kim do, and Kim is like, you know, an all-star athlete. Like she does all of these things. She does all of these things. It's like, okay, so she's like sporty, she's popular, she's smart, she's nice to her brother, she's nice to her friends. Like there's kind of like nothing really wrong with her. She just seems like a cool, chill person in high school. Yeah.
She's just incredibly popular. Everyone likes her, but in that way that's like not a mean girl, like popular. Like she's popular because she's nice to everybody. And everyone likes her. Like that's just why she's popular. And the same with her boyfriend, very average, Nick.
Average.
Yeah. He's just a nice guy, just a normal nice guy who just all the girls are crazy for. Yeah, and it's like, it's quite a nice thing. It's like, oh, they're just regular high school kids. They don't play into any, apart from like one of their friends is like, she's a virgin. That's the only like real big trope they have, where it's like, this one is like very weird about having sex. Isn't that funny?
But I did really like the conversation that Kim has with her, where she's so like, this is 1980, okay? And Kim is basically telling her, it's like, why are you gonna quote unquote let him have sex with you? Like, you choose whether you want to fuck your teenage boyfriend or not. If he's pressuring you, like, don't feel like you should be doing it. just for him. And then
Yeah.
at the end, when they do have that sex scene, that girl Wendy is like, no, I don't wanna, and he's such a dick about it. But she doesn't bend to him. Good for her. Although she does still get killed, but good for her.
She does still get killed, but yeah, she doesn't venture it. But her other friend, who's with Slick, is just like, it's just like getting a shot. Don't worry about it. And I'm just like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? But, yeah, it is like, and he's awful about it. And it's that thing, he tries to push her head down, which is like, horrendous. But yeah, that is like, the fact that it even gets talked about is like a weird. And then she's one of the few girls you also get to see like the boobs of in a way that's like, and I'm like, this is really weird that you've made her this girl, but then also been like, don't worry guys, you still get to see her chest. But yeah, they're basically just a regular group of friends who are nice to each other, who are just excited about going to prom, who, I don't know, it's all set up quite nicely. You don't have to, there's not like a huge amount to like even follow. It starts off with like the backstory, and then they're just kids at school together, and you get to know their like, politics of like who's friends with who and whatever, but there's not a huge amount to follow. And it's quite fun. And it ticks along at quite a nice pace, where suddenly all the stuff starts happening. And you're like, ooh, this is, yeah.
And it does have like a lot of those slasher tropes that were becoming tropes around this time. So even from Black Christmas, it's got the dirty phone calls. And then obviously... It's got the final girl, it's got all the kind of high school politics, it's got the prom like from Carrie, it's even got Jamie Lee from Halloween, which had been just released like 2 years before this. And the film only got made because Jamie Lee got cast, so they were having trouble with funding it until she approached them and she wanted to do the role, and she got cast, and then it was kind of a lot easier because of the success of Halloween. But the filmmaking part of it, like, I'm constantly surprised at kind of how inventive it is. Like, it's the editing and some of the shots, the way that some of the kind of the horror shots are done, I thought were quite interesting. Like, even the way that the first beginning scene with the kids is filmed, that's fucking scary. And like, in a way that kids are always scary, but kids who are getting up to kind of weird bullying business are particularly always just strike me oddly, where it's like, fucking hell, kids are savage, aren't they? And then the whole stuff with the phone and the way they sometimes, like, when they shoot the teenagers now kind of older, and then they flash back really quickly to the kids that they were. All of the setup and the way that all of the plot is kind of presented visually instead of through clunky exposition, I thought was actually very good.
Yeah, you're right, actually. They never go, oh, remember when we were kids? And like, it's not like they all have a dark secret. Like, no, it's like no one's even thinking about it anymore. Like, the fact that they were there when this girl died. And so, you're right. They don't talk about how they know each other or how that relates to like whatever in the past or whatever. It's all done. No, you know who they are. And it's really, and even the deaths, like, which I always love. Like, I've talked about in a time where I'm just like, I always love like more practical. It's like, well, if you can't show something actually going into skin, there's ways around it. And all the deaths feel very like, still very visceral and real without them having to like show a huge amount. Like the girl, the virgin girl, where she gets killed, it's like a close up of her eyes, and it's actually really well done. Like, of him, like, he's slitting her throat, but you can't see her throat, you just see her eyes. And her eyes like just going like, and it's like, this is really, I don't know, it just worked incredibly well. And then seeing her like body afterwards, so I really love that about it. And even the biggest chase scene with she's Wendy, right? She's running and she's trying to hide in all these places, and I don't know why I never get one of the things from American prom films and this Canadian prom film. It's like, why have you chained the children in the school? Like, that's what, there's always like a thing where like there's a chain on the door. I'm like, why are they chained in? Why are none of the exits open? Surely this is like not safe. It's always something that comes up quite regularly in those kinds of films. I'm just like, why are there chains on the door when it's a night the kids are in the school? But anyway, so she can't get out, and that's a really good chase scene. And like the bit when she finally actually gets hurt, you're like, oh my god, like it's actually because she's been running for so long, and she does an amazing performance of like being that scared, like just as scared as she would be, and how it escalates and how she actually can't get away. She's running out of places to hide. So when he finally gets you, you're just like, oh man, this is like, and it's just the sound of it. You don't see, you just hear the sound of him like swinging an axe and like, so it's done incredibly well. Like, yeah, you're right. It's really effective. The shots, and yeah, there's not too much. And even there's a really lovely scene with Jamie Lee Curtis. So it's Jamie Lee Curtis' sister that dies, right? It's her young or older sister or sister who's, I don't know how old she was, but like their sister. And there's a really lovely scene with her mum, because the parents aren't in it a huge amount, but there's a bit with the mum where Jamie Lee's getting ready for prom. And her mum comes in and is like, oh, do you know my dark lipstick? And it's like a nothing conversation, but her mum's obviously like distracted, and like you can sense that her mum's never come back from it, and Jamie Lee's just a bit like kind of at a loss as to how to like really deal with her mother. And it's like really lovely, because again, it's not like she doesn't bring up the sister, she doesn't like, it's not overt, it's just like, oh, here's this like nothing conversation, which is actually really just shows the relationship they have now, and shows that her mum is a bit distracted, never really recovered, never really like, has never been happy since then. Like, and it's, I don't know, it's really lovely. Leslie Nielsen, who plays their dad, is such a weird, I kept waiting for him to say something funny.
Yes. I you know, sometimes you get like this selective amnesia about some films, like, I forgot you were in this. I always get this about Leslie Nielsen in this film. So even though I've seen this film maybe like 3-4 times in my life, when I rewatched it for this, I was again surprised by Leslie Nielsen. I was like, what? What is he doing here?
I don't think I've ever seen him in like a serious role ever in my life.
So this was actually like his last serious role, because he was like he's again Canadian. Also did not know that. Why did I not know that? And he mostly been doing kind of like, he was a fairly well-known actor, but he wasn't known as, you know, the Naked Gun actor yet.
But I was just like, oh, this is, I don't know what to do with this. Why are you a dad? You like a funny. Also, he literally has always been the same age. Like, I don't understand him at all.
Yes, it's like Steve Martin. They've always been the same age.
You've just always been that age. But yeah, it was just really funny. I was like, is he going to say something funny? Nope, just a regular guy in this one.
I do love the fact that they do kind of have a motive. Like, there are something happens, and there's this kind of plot, or, you know, to keep quiet amongst the kids, which is basically, let's just say it's basically the same plot from I Know What You Did Last Summer. So, you know, let's pay some respects to Prom Night. But there's also this thing of like, you know, the killer is obviously Alex, and he just also never let it go. And it kind of makes sense. Like, it's a fairly understandable motive. It's like, I'm really traumatized by seeing my kid sister die in front of me. The kids that were responsible never got their comeuppance. I'm gonna give them their comeuppance. Fuck them. They deserve it. And I kind of love that. Like, it's not too much to understand, but it makes sense. And they kind of gave it's a fairly, you know, closed, book-ended story. It's like, here's the motive, here's the killer dies, the end.
Yeah. And it's even he's like, considering he has this plan and he's just like fully murdering people, like in the last, you know, 20 minutes of the film, he plays it very cool. The rest, it's like, you do not get it. Like, he is like, I don't know, he's handling this very well. He's like, just gonna murder some people, it's gonna go really well, not worried about it.
He's got his to-do list. Same as Bellatrix in Kill Bill. He is, you know, crossing people off the list. He gets very annoyed when someone doesn't pick up the phone. I think it's Nick who doesn't pick up the phone, and he's like, fuck, I can't take this off.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. Oh my god, yeah. Just like called and harassed that person. Tick. But that's what I mean. It's like the rest of the time he's just being very normal. And I'm just like, but in your spare time, this is what you're doing. I also like he doesn't really seem to have a problem with like the fact that his sister is dating one of the people he's like about to murder, he's like, yeah, it's fine. You have your fun now, Kim, because he'll be dead very soon. And even like, and there's like weird things like, it's definitely the 70s, where that guy who literally looks like early man, who is like the bully. Like with his monobrow, like just big, hefty guy. He does. He is not evolved. He got left behind. He's like just harassing. Yeah. And his job is just to harass women and like people in general. And there's a bit where he's like literally sexually harassing Jamie Lee Curtis, and her brother steps in, and then they go to the principal's office, and then the Neanderthal guy is like, oh, he started it, and the dad's like, is that true? And I'm like, wait, are we going to skip past the fact that he was harassing a girl?
Not just like a girl, but the principal's daughter.
And then he's just like, oh, you just started. It's like, yes, for a reason. He was like defending. And like a girl he was literally sexually harassing, but okay. But yeah, he's just like a big, I don't know, big lunk. Just, I don't even know what his end goal is. He's like, I will stand next to Jamie Lee Curtis at some point. That's my ultimate goal. I will fight my way into being prom king and then somehow force Jamie Lee Curtis to be in a relationship with me. Is like, kind of seems to be what his goal is. I don't really know.
Listen, I think his goal is to be beheaded, because he does get the most graphic death scene of all in the entire film. And then his head is just like on the prom like
walkway.
Walkway. Yeah. Is that the word for it? Like
catwalk, promenade? I don't know.
On the prom promenade?
Promenade. Wait a second. Promenade. That makes sense. Okay, we're back on track.
So he's on the promenade. That's actually like, that was a great scene where he gets beheaded like from behind by Alex.
That is a great scene. Yeah.
Alex really wanted to fuck him up after that scene in the cafeteria. Even though actually that doesn't make sense, because Alex thought it was Nick, and then it turns out to be Lou, but still.
It's just a win-win, Yeah. He's just like, oh, okay, I didn't mean it to be you, but I guess,
That'll do.
Why not? And it is, you're like, I think like a lot of their money went into that specific graphic scene. I'm like, this is their best like shot. And they've done it really well. Again, it's obviously his real head, like, they must have done it where his head was like poking through. Like,
yes, they did. Yeah.
It looks really good. I'm like, this is really well done, actually.
It's so good. And and weirdly, because before recording, we were talking about kind of how Hollywood films have no problem with violence, but have a lot of problems with sex on screen. And again, this is Canadian, so slightly different. But this, they had to add some violence into this film because it was too not graphic enough to get I think it was like a PG-13 rating, or the equivalent of a PG-13, and they were like, well, we can't have like a PG slasher film, no one's going to come see it because it's not going to be violent enough. And I think the head scene is the one that they kind of added in, or like made more graphic.
Scene. That was a fantastic addition. Because it really, that's like the death you really remember. It's such a good one. And then after that, it just kind of, that's like the end, and you don't really expect it. So that's kind of like the big, like you said, it just kind of goes from like beat to beat, where it's like, he starts killing people. He's pretty successful at killing people, actually. And then the head comes off, and then you're kind of in the end bits of it. That's it. It's not like, and then there's going to be like another chase scene or a big explanation scene. It's like, no, like he tries to kill Nick. Jamie Lee Curtis does a terrible job of fighting him off for the most part. I'm like, hit him with something, for Christ's sakes, Jamie. Like, she kind of like keeps trying to grab him. I'm like, no, just like actually hit him. And then she recognizes him.
Yes.
And then that's kind of it. Like, she does eventually hit. Yeah. And then the film ends, and you're like, oh, this is really, we just got the full thing. Like, there's no like caveat. There's no like, oh, big explanation needed. No. And considering Jamie Lee Curtis is the final girl, there actually isn't, she doesn't have the big chase scene.
No.
Like, she doesn't have the big running and hiding and like trying to talk reason to her brother who's like, there's none of it.
No, Wendy gets all of that.
Yeah. And I love that she recognized it like by his eyes.
Yes.
Eventually.
I mean, they're twins in the film. Like, so it isn't like clearly explained in the actual dialogue, but you just get the fact that they're, you know, sister and brother, but they're fraternal twins, which makes that weird on the cliff I love you scene make a bit more sense, because that was a little bit off. I was like,
yeah, they had their weird flirty like incest, like it was like really weird when she's like getting ready and he's just like stop looking, like I don't know what he says, but he's like, I'm your brother, I'm leering at you, and I was like, oh, what? Yeah. What's going on here? What's happening?
But can we please talk about the disco scene?
The disco scene. So there's a bit where before prom, Jamie Lee's like, they're setting up the dance floor, like where they're all like still the day of like when they're at school, and Jamie Lee Curtis is like practicing her like little disco moves, and Wendy's like, are you practicing? And Jamie Lee's like, I am actually. And I'm like, oh, okay. So she just, you know, she wants to get her like dancing on point. But little did I know that there's actually an entire routine, and it's quite a long routine. It's really unexpected, like couple of minutes in this film, which is just like a really well done disco routine.
Yes.
Like I'm really into it. I was like, this is great. I really love that there's a whole thing here.
I love that scene so much. I think that scene and the gifts from that scene is what took me to watching Prom Night for the first time. What did you make of the random, like, extended 2.5 minute disco dance sequence in this Canadian slasher film?
I was not prepared. I was watching it, like, and then they do, and it's also like their big, like, prom king and queen dance, right? Which would usually be a slow dance in any other film. But this one was like, no, disco routine. And I was like, oh, it started. And I was like, okay, cool. And it just kept going. I was like, oh, okay. And then all the angles you're getting, I was like, they must have done this like several times. Yeah. Several times, because you were getting close up. You're getting like wide shots. I'm like, they've done this a few times. Like this is, they put a lot of time into the scene for some reason. They're like, disco's a very important part of the story, actually. And I was like, you know what? Maybe that's why Nick's so popular, because he's learnt this routine and he's doing a good job. He's not embarrassing her.
He's doing a serviceable job, but he's not the star. Like Jamie Lee has all the fucking moves in this scene.
All the moves. She just legs and like a floaty outfit and a disco queen. But that's what I mean. I'm like, he's fully supporting her in her disco dreams. This is like the moment, and this is the moment at prom. So like, I feel like this is a scene where usually it would be like the big, like Carrie being crowned prom queen. It will be that scene. But because it's not the same in this film, we don't have that moment. This is like that moment of like, this is the peak of everything.
Yes.
It was like everything you want your teen prom to be, this was it, and it's just a disco scene. Yes. And then they have like also like cuts of like when everyone else starts dancing, there's like all these cuts of people like actually dancing. And I'm like, I just love it. They were just like, we're gonna do disco justice. And it's also a thing, like I was listening to, I think, a podcast about disco.
Disco Demolition Night?
Yes, I was. Yes, that's what it was. Oh my God. You're wrong about. And about how people would actually like, you know, you'd come like ready. It's not something you just like casually dance along to. You would have your moves in the bag.
Yes.
Like you knew what you were coming to do if there was disco being played anywhere. So I'm like, I love that this is like, they've really encapsulated that in this era of like when it is of like, yeah, you came ready. And not just the women, the men came prepared and ready to show off their moves.
Absolutely.
Like, that's how they were getting girls. That's what they were doing. And I was like, yeah, it's really evident in this scene. It's all there.
This is dance horror at its peak. This is disco slashers. I want this film and this sequence to be remembered more than Saturday Night Fever, because fuck that film. And
exactly.
You'll understand why I say fuck that film if you actually like research the very intense, weird history of that film. And it is not based on a good article, and it is fucked up in so many different ways.
Yeah.
But oh my God, this film. Oh my God, this scene. I love actually that. Okay, so like dance sequences, especially ones with like multiple people, are always tend to fall quite flat, I think. They always tend to be kind of clunky. And I guess it has a lot to do with how difficult they are to shoot and to make seem natural. Yeah. But here they all really seem to be getting into it. Like, it genuinely feels like a sort of weird prom night where, yes, some people were awkward downstairs and some really got therein, like, with their moves. Like, they had been rehearsing for months, just like Jamie Lee Curtis's character.
But even like Mr. Bully guy, like Mr. Early Man, he's there like throwing shapes. He's not even like, yeah, I'm going to two-step in the corner. He's got his arms up like, yeah, fucking getting it. Love dancing, love disco. And I'm like, I love this, that everyone's really there to like show out. No one is there to be cool, or like, as in like, to be cool in the sense of like, I'm going to stand to the edge and then like dancing's not really for me. And I think the reason it's harder in prom films that come later is like, there isn't yet a dance routine would be a really weird thing to happen in a dance situation now. Whereas when it's disco, it's not weird at all. And also we know now that teenagers are just more awkward. Dance isn't in the same way incorporated in that way that everyone just does it and like has a way of doing it because it's like one type of music that everyone's dancing to. So it's always a bit clunky when it happens now. Looking at Riverdale, like, which is clunky every time. They've tried to do it. But like even films like She's All That, or which I know they're not horror, but like they throw a dance routine in and you're just like, this is weird. Why is this happening? Whereas in this film, because of the time it's set, it just makes it looks like it's one of the few times a prom scene happens where you're like, this looks like an actual fun prom because everyone is there like to have a really good time. Everyone wants to dance. Everyone's dancing to every song. Everyone's there like actually trying to shout their best outfits, their best moves, and then some beheading like ruins it actually. And then a little murder gets in the way. And it also makes sense in the sense of like why no one notices that anyone's missing for a really long time because everyone's on the dance floor. No one has time to notice that anyone's not there. And it just kind of feels like, he's ruined the prom though. Like, that's what he's actually done. He's ruined this really fun prom. And even them getting outside, you think there's going to be a part, like in Carrie, where there's like a kind of a stampede. And there is to get out once the head's on the promenade. But actually, everyone just kind of, it's very Canadian. Now I'm thinking, like, there's lots of science. Everyone just gets out quite safely.
I love it.
Like, they all just proceed, like, quite sensibly to the door and, like, get outside calmly. I'm like, oh.
Fucking love it. Also, can we just say that, you know the scene when Kim and Nick are dancing and there's a couple of POV shots of them like holding hands and spinning each other around?
Yes.
Titanic stole that shot from Prom Night.
Right.
Let's just put that on the fucking record. Prom Night did that shot first.
Prom Night did it first, guys, and it was to disco. So
it's better.
So let's just, every shot that's ever done that afterwards, Prom Night did it first.
Yes.
And they did it with a full great dance routine as well, like a full disco routine, which, I mean, who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want that in their film? And with Jamie Lee Curtis, oh my god, it's so good. It's so good.
It's so brilliant. And also, we've talked a lot about kind of a lot of the characters, including Mr. Early Man, but we haven't really talked about the killer, Alex. What did you make of him?
It's weird because he doesn't really have a character before you realize he's a killer.
Yeah.
He's just kind of like around sometimes. He's around like to fight with Early Man. He's around to flirt with his sister. And then he's not really a full person until you're like, oh, look at you, had some edge there. But I just still love it. It does tell you a lot that he picked that outfit to be murdering in. I just can't get over it. He literally looks like he's just, the fact that it's like an outfit, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm like, he's put like a very specific belt on. I don't know. It's like, it's weird. I'm like, why did you do this?
Listen, it fits with the aesthetic of the era. He's got his little dancing like heels on, because those heels are the sort that, you know, John Travolta also wears in Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah.
They look great. It's kind of like properly cut straight black jeans. He's got a very specific belt on. He's got the black turtleneck. He's got the glittery balaclava. I fucking love his outfit.
It's great. It's just so specific. I was just like, I just love that you were like, I love the idea of him, Jamie Lee's, he's like, Jamie, she's ready for prom. She's just going to prom with her boyfriend, who I'm going to murder. Just before, he's like definitely going to ruin her night as well, which is like the funniest thing. He's like, oh, you look amazing. Have a good night at prom. I'm going to kill your boyfriend and ruin everything, like ruin your life for the foreseeable future. But have a good time before that. I won't do it before your disco routine. And I love the idea that after he like flirts with her, he goes back to his room, lays out his little murder outfit, lays out his little like turtleneck and his little belt and his little like tight pants and his little heels. It's like, I'm ready for prom too. Off I go. And then he doesn't, how does he get there? He doesn't, I don't know. I have so many questions about his prep before that. He doesn't even go with one weapon. So this is the other thing. He's not like, okay, I've got my big knife. I'm gonna murder with this. Basically, I'm gonna use this for the most part to murder. He's like, what's around? Got my outfit, didn't think about a weapon. What's lying around? What's there? And I'm just like, why didn't you, how long have you been planning this for? Why haven't you fully thought this through? It's so funny.
So this is what I love about Alex, is that I can fully imagine him doing the laying out the outfit on his bed as he prepares. But what I also love is the fact that he probably has a specific murder notebook where he's planning all these murders, because you know his to-do list of like people to harass when he's doing the phone calls. Then there's another scene where he's literally cutting out their images, their pictures from the yearbook, and then we get shots of everyone sort of finding their own yearbook picture in their locker, which is a very weird kind of polite way of harassing someone.
Right, with a bit of like glass attached, which is obviously from there, and you're like, would they know what this means? I don't think they will.
But I love that because it's so arts and crafts. I love the fact, I imagine that he has a sort of a notebook where he's just, you know, scribbling off and sort of doing kind of beautiful but messed up portraits of all the people that he really wants to kill, and like thinking about it and designing it. But he forgets about the murder weapon.
Just need a weapon. He's all about the aesthetic of like
all
being
about
a
the
murderer.
aesthetic.
But not, because even his list is like, can you not remember their names? I think you can. You go to school with, did you need to write their names down before you called them?
Alex is a doer. A to-do list gives him a certain type of satisfaction that I can completely relate to, where it's like, you know what, I just want to see the list of things that I need to do, and I want to cross them off, and crossing them off is an accomplishment in and of itself. I respect that.
But I'm just like, you know, all of them, you know, and it's like completely innocuous that Nick doesn't answer, but he's like so annoyed. It's like, does this really make a difference to your plan?
No, but he's annoyed because he hasn't managed to cross off the task, and that's annoying. I completely understand his motivation for that.
He's like, so he's worked in, he's even figured out, he's like, what should I say when I murder everybody? And he's like, oh no, I'll do this voice. I'll be like, now, it's now, and it's now. It's like, so you figured that out, but then again was like, what am I going to murder these people with? I should probably have like a signature weapon that like goes with my outfit. And it's like, no, he figured out what he was going to say. He didn't even make it incredibly obvious what the reason was. Like, he wasn't even like, this is for like my sister. He's just like, now.
None of them figure out what the fuck is going on. When they start getting those phone calls, none of them actually tie two and two together.
They're all just a bit like, okay.
Like,
anyway.
the girls obviously think they're just being harassed by some sex creep. And because, you know, it's just very much established, and it is well known that that is a daily occurrence in every single woman's life. But Nick doesn't even pick up the phone, which, by the way, has one of my favorite lines of the film, where his dad says, like, for a man who's so fast on the disco floor, you're so slow walking.
Yeah. Like, it's just, I'm like, what is happening here? Like, he's really unsuccessfully, if Jamie Lee Curtis didn't recognize him, he actually just murdered everyone, got away with it. It's like, no one would know why they got, I'm not sure anyone would even tie it together. It would just be like, yeah, just these random kids got killed for like this one night and no one knows why. It's so funny that he did so much planning and that actually the execution was just like,
so
not the best.
I think Alex has some trouble communicating.
For sure, for sure.
So perhaps, like, let's put it at that. He's got trouble communicating and his intentions. He's a bit too creative with how he chooses to tell the people that he's about to murder that he's going to murder them, because none of them get it. No, none of them get what's happening.
More straightforward, my love. You need to be more direct. And even the end bit, he's trying desperately to kill Nick. Again, he's like, sister's right there. It's like, I feel like you're not paying attention. Like, you're like, my sister was killed by these kids. Like, yeah, but you're in the process of ruining your other sister, your twin sister's life. And even then, I don't really know what's happening. There's just a really funny part in that bit where Nick's been like knocked out by not even anything to do with like the killer, but because Early Man has got his friends to knock out Nick so he can walk on as prom king. And I don't, to what effect, I don't know. To what end, I don't know.
Again, a very polite prank.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's ways you can tell that this film is Canadian, because like in Carrie, they were going to cover a girl in pig blood and humiliate her in front of everyone, which is what they did. But here, there's like, I'm just gonna knock out the prom king and like walk the promenade myself. Like,
and then immediately be told off for it. And like, and that'll be it. It's like, I don't really understand what the goal is here, but sure. And then when they're trying to get out, so Jamie Lee goes back and finds him, and like they're trying to get out, and he's like dragging his ankle. I'm like, Nick, what is wrong with your ankle? Like, what happened to your ankle? So it's a really confusing part where I'm just like, oh, he's like it's broken. And then like a minute later, he's walking on it. And I'm like, what happened there? Like, what was going on? That whole end fight scene is just really funny to me. The fact that like Jamie Lee picks up a chair and then kind of just like really throws it, it doesn't go anywhere near him. And then suddenly he's been so accurate with his axe, like up until then. But suddenly he can't swing that axe to kill Nick in any sensible fashion. And there's like a bunch of chairs around, and Jamie Lee just trying to like grab him off the back of like off of Nick's. Like, and I'm just like, this is a really funny sequence. All the teachers have left. I love the teacher, like, there's a head on the stage. We're out. Yes, there are students still in there, probably fighting for their lives, but they are not our responsibility anymore. So no adults come back in. They're just like, I don't know what's happening in there, but hopefully everyone's fine.
Again, relatable.
Yeah,
makes sense.
There's a guy with a gun literally outside just waiting for the killer to come out. It's like, you don't want to go back in with your gun and see if you could help in any way? No? Don't want to?
Nope.
And I love it. I love that it's just like this really weird fight scene. And then she finally like clocks him in their head and she's like, oh no! And then that's it. And you're like, oh.
I am dying. I love this film. I want more people to watch this film. I think it's such an underappreciated little slasher. I mean, it made a ton of money. It made a ton of money when it came out. But I don't think it gets the same love as like Halloween or Friday the 13th do when they, or even Black Christmas, really, which is a cult classic in so many ways.
I can see why it would get buried in like those other films, which this doesn't feel as timeless in a way, if you see what I mean. Like, obviously the other ones are really obviously set in a specific time, but because of all the disco, this is very specific.
Excuse you? This does not feel timeless? How dare you, madam?
To disco connoisseurs, sure.
This is,
but I feel like
a true tribute to the power of disco.
If you're good enough at disco, if you're fast enough on the dance floor, as Nick's dad says, maybe you'll escape getting killed. Because I love how disco. I'm calling Nick disco. Oh no! I love how the character of disco.
Listen, disco is actually one of the main characters of this film, in the same way as, New York is a character in Taxi Driver. Disco is a character in Prom Night.
I was going to say, I love how Nick somehow gets like a redemption arc just by being like Jamie Lee Curtis's boyfriend and also like good at disco.
That tracks. I don't see what the issue is.
That's his whole redemption. By not answering the phone and being fast on the dance floor, he's saved. He's like, fine.
Yeah, being nice to Jamie Lee Curtis and being fast on a disco floor. Yep, tracks.
That's
good enough.
You win. having an inside joke with your dad about dancing and whatever, kind of rebuffing Wendy's, like the slutty Wendy's. I love that she's wearing a really cool dress, but all like, yeah, her slutty dress.
Bless Wendy, she's just obsessed with a guy who doesn't want her. We've all been Wendy.
She all
really
been Wendy.
Wants to get back with him, and he in that conversation in the hallway, he does. To be fair to Nick, he does go like, I don't want to get back with you. I'm not interested. Let it go.
But then he's like sitting at the prom, letting her pour at him. Like she's like literally like got a hand on like all over his collar and his chest, and he's just sitting there being like, oh, like looking mildly annoyed. But he could get up, but he's just like, nah, I'm gonna sit here and let this happen.
Okay, to be fair, Nick is very good. Well, he's moderately good on the dance floor, but he does not have much of a personality. Aside from that.
Oh no, he's aggressively average. Like I'm like, what's happening in the boy situation in your school that he is like the guy is just, I don't know what's going on there, but like he's just the guy. He's just, you know, the hottest guy that ever lived apparently. And like Wendy's really hot. So you're just like, you can do better, Wendy. Like, for real, like you can do a lot better than this. You're fine. You'll be fine. But I love you. Earlier you called it dance horror as well.
Yes.
And I thought you said dance whore. And I was like, who's Dan? Wait, which one's Dan? I'm just adding characters. I was like, Disco's a character, Dan's in there somewhere, Dan's whore.
Oh my god.
It's like, yeah, this film is kind of dance hall. Yeah, you're right. I just accepted it. I was like, yep.
Oh my god, okay, I need to enunciate a lot better.
I just need to listen.
So, before we move in, I think we're like primed and giggling, which is the exact right mood for student bodies. Yeah. But shall we move on to that film?
Sure.
Hello, it's me, the heavy breather from every horror film you've ever seen. You know me. First I terrorize my victim by the telephone. Then I choose my murder weapon. A gun? Nah, too easy. A hatchet? Nah, I always use a hatchet. For this movie, I want something very frightening and deadly.
So, I'm not going to ask you to summarize it because I don't think anyone could.
Oh, actually, you know what? I can.
So, please.
So, Student Bodies is to prom night and Halloween as Scary Movie is to Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer, essentially.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to confess, I had not seen this film before.
Neither did I.
And I was very surprised.
Yep. Just even from the outset, I was like, "Oh, this is not what I think it's going to be, is it? This is weird." And you know what's funny about it is that Leslie Nielsen was in Prom Night.
Yes.
And then it feels like Leslie Nielsen should be in Student Bodies. And I'm just like, it's really weird that he's not in this, but he's in the other one. But yeah, it like from the off, it's like this is weird. This is very much a comedy.
Yes.
About horror films.
It's a spoof.
Yeah.
But so I know that like sometimes spoof films are, a lot of people don't like them. I've always had a soft spot for them. Very often I've actually seen the spoof films before I've seen the actual film. Like I saw Hot Shots and Hot Shots Part 2 before I ever saw Top Gun.
Because they're incredible. Yeah. The Hot Shots films were amazing.
Are you like a fan of spoof films?
when they're done well, there was an era when they were just being done, like, they were so silly. Like, even, like, Police Academy. I loved Police Academy. Some of them are hard to watch now because obviously a lot of it relies on, like, quite sexist and, like, weird things. But, like, Hot Shots, me and my brother would, watch Hot Shots, I don't know how many times. Absolutely thought it was one of the funniest things we've ever seen. Loved Naked Gun. I love the Scary Movie films. When spoofs are done well, I think they're a great thing because, but I guess it relies on a cultural language that is harder to do now. Whereas like Scary Movie felt like kind of the last time was like everyone would have seen these same slasher movies and understand all these references. And I guess at the time of Student Bodies, it would have been the same thing. Halloween would have been out.
Yeah.
Prom Night would have been out.
Friday the 13th, massive success.
So there's all these tropes that everyone's aware of. Everyone would have been seeing those films. So it was like ripe for being like made fun of. And it has all the same things that we kind of associate with spoofs now. I guess I didn't know it happened then. I was like, oh, you're like, oh, you suddenly realize like nothing is new.
Yes.
This has always been a thing that people did. And I love that. So, and Jamie Lee Curtis is like the Nev Campbell of the time. Like,
yes.
Where there's at the beginning, it's literally like they set the time as Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Jamie Lee Curtis's birthday, which is really funny. That is funny. I was like, yeah, that, sure.
So the thing that like actually really surprised me once I realized very quickly on that this is a spoof, I was like, oh wait, but this is actually funny. This is funny in 2021. I was taking notes of like some of the lines which were actually making me laugh.
And there's good like the whole spoof of the phone call at the beginning.
Oh my god. So
where she's just like so unfazed by someone calling up and like heavy breathing down the phone. The principal being like, it's the day of prom and the day of the big parade and the day of the big football game and the day of the big funeral. I was like, this is fun. That's funny. Like that everything's happening on this day. It's really, and the whole thing of like, yeah, all the dirty teenagers like having sex. They're like, yeah, let's go have sex. And then
the one teenager who's like, everything makes him hot. He's like, funerals make me hot.
Yeah. And it's just all the guys just being like, oh, come on, like, let's just do it like right now. And these like really gross places that don't make sense to do it right now. I don't think I'll ever get Horsehead Bookends out of my head, ever. They say it so many times in film, Horsehead Bookends. And I'm just like, yeah, Horsehead Bookends. I don't really know. I just don't, it's just in my head now. But yeah, there are some parts that are really like, even the cast of adult characters are really spoofed of like, they're really like, oh, the matronly, like sour, like lady who works at the school and the principal who's like a bit weird and like a teacher who's a bit pervy and I don't know. It's really silly. To the point where like there's the unlocked door thing where like they're like have like a little arrow being like unlocked, like, yeah.
I loved the signs on the screen. So they keep like a death count as people start getting murdered. And there's like death count 1. And the sign at the door is like unlocked, important plot point. And then further on, there's like death count still, whatever, 11 or whatever. This one doesn't count because they weren't murdered by the killer. And I'm such a sucker for that shit. Like I genuinely love it. It's like, this is funny. This is funny, especially because we've been rewatching slasher films, like the original ones for the series. Watching this now, I'm like, this is actually fucking hilarious. Yes, nothing is new, but...
and God. Even the parents coming... So it starts with the babysitter, and she's, invited her boyfriend round and all that stuff. But then her and her boyfriend get murdered. They're the first victims. And the family comes home and the mum starts screaming because she's like, because she hasn't done the washing up. She hasn't washed one plate for 75 cents an hour. Like, and it's like this whole running joke of how little they're paying her. She hasn't washed up. She hasn't done all these things. And she takes her really long. And then when she finds the body, she's like, nonplussed about it. And I love that she gives the girl's mum the money she owes her, but she makes it down to I paid her 65 cents an hour, so here's what I owed her. And I'm like, this is like they managed to fit in how little babysitters are paid for the responsibility they have as well in this film. But like and even, you know what I love? Which, if you listen to the first one of this new season about how I loved Leatherface having a moment to himself, what I loved about the spoof was the running monologue of the killer. Of him being tired and him being like, oh, all these stairs. Oh, and I'm like, yeah, okay.
It's like, oh, I had to pick a jogger for fuck's sake.
Yeah. And he's just like, oh my God, oh, the stairs, oh, for crying out loud. I'm like, I love that we got this. I love that he's like heavy breathing a lot of the time because he's tired. And when he's like, why do they always run for me? And he's like, oh, because I'm wearing galoshes. And that just like gives me away straight away. And I'm just like, I'm enjoying this inner monologue. I'm enjoying this, like, him being kind of annoyed that he's picked annoying people to kill because it's a lot of effort for him. I thoroughly like that. I was like, yeah, it is exhausting. It is. You're right. You are tired. There's a lot of stairs. Like, why do they always go upstairs? You're right. And the gum, he's like annoyed. He gets stuck in gum and he's like, oh, for crying out loud. So I particularly felt like very vindicated. It's like, yes, more of this. How does a killer feel about the work he has? It's a lot of work, murdering all these people.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? We never get a training montage for the killer.
We don't.
And we should.
We should.
I mean, clearly they need to, like, do some cardio.
What did he do to get into this? Yeah. What did he have to do to get there? And there's a girl who's like the virgin. She wears like a little badge, like that's like about how she doesn't want to have sex, and like everyone's really suspicious of her because of it. Everyone's like, oh, fucking weirdo over there that doesn't like doing it. And what she say? There's one part where she's like, the doctor says, I got swine flu from repressed sexual like.
Yes. One of my favorite moments as well is like when there's a mean girl who takes the handicap parking spot in front of I think he's a student who's
blind guy and a student in a wheelchair.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, what the fuck are you doing? And she gets out of the car and like, great physical beauty can be a handicap too.
I know. And she just says it like, yeah, you know, just that's how it is. That's just like, it's so, it's just every time, you know, there's not a moment where they haven't taken an opportunity to be like, it's going to be silly, guys. It's never going to not be silly. And there is like, so for the most part, it's like, spoofy fun, and then you get to points you're like, but it is set in a certain time where there is just like overt racism in it also. So you get to like, there's a student who is from a country in Africa, and he turns up in like a dashiki, and he's like, I bust in, the bus has just got here from like somewhere in Africa. And there's a bit where he's literally holding a spear. He gets murdered, like kind of in the background. There's a black couple who are like about to do it, who get murdered with an aubergine, like, which is what eggplant is like was used like, I think specifically by Italian Americans, was used as like a racially, like, you know, like as like a what's it called? What's that word when you call someone a
slur?
Yeah, slur. There you go. Oh. I was like, what's it called? So it was used like, yeah. So eggplant is like was like a racial slur.
Oh,
so that's why he's like, oh, what do I use? And then it's like an eggplant. And that's why she's like, oh my god, an eggplant. And you're like, oh
no.
So there's like a weird thing where you're like, oh, there are people like slapping their thigh, like laughing to this like joke, which is just actually really offensive. And it's so weird because it's just kind of slotted in and it didn't even need to be in there. They've just been like, hey, let's have like a weird racist joke. So it's like, there's things about its time where you're like, oh, this is weird.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they actually, considering how many there could be, I mean, there's like the bars
the bar has like been completely obliterated. If we're just saying like, oh, you know, it could have been worse. It could have been more racist.
2 racist jokes, so you know. And I think I only know that like from another film. I can't remember what film I know that's a racist, because it never made it over here. So I think even if you were watching it now here, you wouldn't even know that was racist. But I was like, it's like a very specific time. And what is that film with? It's got what's his face in it? Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
And where he plays like a mafia guy.
The King of New York.
Is it? Yeah, maybe it is. And he does a whole monologue about you're part eggplant, which is like basically he's like, before he kills someone, he's talking about how they're part black. Because they're I can't remember what film it is, but he does a whole speech about it. But that's the only reason I know that was a slur, because I had to look it up when I watched that film. But yeah, so like there's a weird part which is like a weird obscure like thing in it. But I feel like you could literally cut those bits out. Like those parts of the film are so nothing. You could just lift those out and just make that a spoof, and it wouldn't take away from the story. It wouldn't take away. And I'm like, I want someone to do an edit, because you could just take those parts out. It doesn't take away from the story. They're just like jokes where they've been like, let's do a racist joke now.
Yeah, they're bad jokes that actually add
that
nothing
don't have
to the
anything
film.
to do with anything. So you could just like, and if you took those parts out, it would actually just be like a funny spoof film without any of that uncomfortable weirdness. And it's weird because it's like none of the jokes are that serious. There's literally like fart jokes and like, I don't know, it's all these like really silly jokes, and then you're like, there's something that's like actually quite dark about slotting a racist joke in it. You're like, there's literally like these dumb jokes in this whole thing, and this is the only one that's like a bit off. Not a bit off, like incredibly off. So you're like, it's quite weird, and it's the only thing that means it can't really stand the test of time in the way that it could have done without, which is why I think I'm going to start a petition to edit those parts out whenever you're screening them. They're unneeded, don't need them. Yeah, because it kind of takes you out of it. It's quite jarring.
Yeah.
Because up until then, it's just been really silly, like fun jokes. Yeah. But, and it's so easy to miss as well. Like it's weird. It's a weird one because like, it's not even like a racial slur that I think was ever widely used.
I mean, it sounds like very culturally and specific to a particular moment.
Yeah. To a time, to a moment, like when everyone would know what that was. But I'm just like, now it's not even anything. But yeah, it's, and you, like I said, like when you watch like Police Academy and stuff, it's full of stuff like that.
Yeah.
There are so many jokes you're like, oh man, like, good God. I cannot believe this is just like in a film that's essentially like a family, like comedy, like spoofy, like fun film that's meant to be like not that serious. You're like, oh, so much racism. So I think it's also just, it's hard to watch those films now. What the stuff that, and even if you look at comedians of the time and stuff like that, the stuff that they were allowed to say in like their clean set is like, wow, like this is, you're seeing people who look like a mum and dad who's gone for a lovely night out, like absolutely yucking it up at this guy making like incredibly racist jokes. Like that was completely normal, which is just an odd era to be making any kind of comedy in, because no one would have batted an eye at it. No one would have even been like, thought anything of it. They would have just been like, yeah, of course. Which is an odd like thing to, I don't know. But
that is weird. So let's start the petition to recut student bodies, take out the racism.
You can just pluck those scenes right out. And it's in the same way, like me and Anna, we saw Showgirls recently, and in the same way they don't show the horrific rape scene.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, just pluck that out. We don't need to see that again ever. In these films, it just feels like you would never even know. In the same way they pluck out the racism from Agatha Christie books and never tell anyone about them, you could do the same with this, and we can just pretend it never happened. They just like pluck those babies right out of there. Everyone's like, and she gets to be a beloved treasure.
And you know what? In a spoof film, it's easier than with any other, easier even than with Agatha Christie.
Yeah,
because none of the jokes are interconnected, really.
No, and you're not massively concerned with plot, like really. So it's like you could very easily like, and there's literally like, and once you get past those scenes, there's a funny corpse farting scene. There's like loads of funny lines after that, but it's weird when you have to get past that scene to get to like the rest of the film. You're like, oh, That's disappointed me. If you like films like Airplane and Hot Shots or Naked Gun, you'll like that. You'll like this film. Like, it's just so silly, and it literally there's every opportunity to do something silly. They're like, here's a silly thing. They've just not thrown any idea out. They're like, and then maybe this happens, like, yeah, put it in there. Like, just everything that's silly that could happen does happen. There's a bit which I love where the couple goes under the bleachers to do it.
Yes.
And there's just constant trash just falling through the, and I was like, yeah, because under the bleachers would actually be really dirty. And he goes off to get a broom. He's like, the best broom and blanket money can buy. Because he's just like, and they even make a joke, right, which I'm guessing is from Prom Night, where the killer's like, what's around? What can I use to murder with? It's always like these random items that he's using to kill people with because he hasn't got one murder weapon. I was like, this must be to do with Prom Night. Because I love that it's just like, what can I use? It's just like an eraser or a horsehead bookend or I don't know. He's like got every plan, but like what I'm going to use to murder with. So I do like that it comes directly from that. And that the people don't notice that anyone's murdered as well. Like, takes everyone, the guys who come back to find their murdered girlfriend, it takes them a really long time to notice that their girlfriend's like very clearly dead. But yeah, but the bleacher scene was like hilarious because like it was just constant, like literal constant trash just falling through the bleachers, and I'm just like, yeah, I feel like it would be dirty under there. Why does everyone think under the bleachers a good place to have sex when everyone's eating snacks and like, I don't know.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I think we've probably spoken about student bodies more than anyone has spoken about student bodies since it was made.
Since it literally came out. Yeah. And it's just, you'd have to, and it's such a weird film because like you have to watch a certain like number of films to even like, to get a lot of the things. Like I get like there's lots of slasher things. I was like, you have to watch Prom Night, you have to watch Halloween, you have to watch Friday the 13th.
Yeah, it makes sense. It is funny, with the caveat. It is funny, like if you know that era of slashers, like then it makes sense. Then it's funny. Like those,
and it's worth watching it right after you watch one or two of those films. Like watching it right after Prom Night definitely added to it. Like I was like, this is even funnier because I've just watched this film. And it's just, it's really silly. But yeah, and you're waiting for Leslie Nielsen to pop up and he doesn't. It's very weird, very jarring.
It would have actually been so funny if he popped up straight after making Prom Night as well.
Yeah, it would have been great. But like, it just reminds me of Leslie Nielsen without him actually being in it.
Yes,
he's there in spirit. Yeah. But I liked a lot of things about it. I just want those scenes to be like just plucked out.
We're starting a petition right now. Let's make student bodies not racist and just funny.
And just funny. Gonna write my congressman and be like, this should be priority number 1. So the more people can enjoy this silly film.
Isara, thank you so much for
Thank you.
This again, an amazing episode where we're just laughing most of the time. And where can people find more of your work? What have you been up to?
I am, as always, writing my monthly column for Final Girls and Bloody Women, which is called Bloody Perfect. The most recent one has just come out. It's about Pan's Labyrinth. It's really fun. You can follow me on Twitter, which is at Isara_BB, or Instagram, which is at Isarasaurus. And I'm writing stuff always. It's Halloween month. I love that everyone's just claimed the month now. We're like, it's Halloween the whole month.
Yes.
So I'm sure there'll be some other stuff coming out that I'm writing or doing, but you can follow me on Twitter and it will all be there. But yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was so much fun, as usual.